All right, everybody. Here we are. Do Dissidents Podcast Sunday night at 7 p.m. Ryan Wood says, let's go. All right, let's go. Sup, bitches? What's up, bitch? Russell? How
What's
you
up,
doing,
yo?
bitch?
What's
Yeah.
up?
That's going
What's
to be
up?
our new greeting for everybody.
Yeah.
What's up, bitch?
What's up? What's up, bitches?
Yeah,
We are
exactly.
we are going to provide you with 2 full hours of toxic masculinity tonight.
I don't think we're doing 2 hours tonight. I wasn't
No.
expecting a very big crowd tonight. Yeah, and I bet you don't know why, but I do.
Well, tomorrow's Indigenous Peoples Day.
Well, that's not the answer I was looking for. The answer I was looking for, especially here, two New Yorkers. The Mets are on tonight, Game 3 of the Wild Card Series. Win or go home against the San Diego Padres. Now, my father is a Bronx New Yorker. He's second generation Bronx, so his father was born in the Bronx. So we're actually, I mean, his father, was born in 1920 in the Bronx. So I am literally grandfathered into being a Yankee fan. But I am not a hater on the Mets. I can root for the Mets. I'm secure enough in my Yankee fandom to the point where I can wish the Mets well, and I do wish them well tonight. By the time many of you are watching this or listening to this, we will know whether or not the Mets have advanced to the division series. We are cutting into game time here, so if our audience is a bit suppressed, I have a feeling that's why. But to those who are here, thank you very much for coming. My grandfather, oddly enough, my Jewish grandfather from the Bronx, born in the Bronx, he loved baseball, but he did not like the Yankees. And he did not like the Yankees because he was convinced that they were an anti-Semitic organization because they didn't hire Jewish players. There aren't too many Jewish ball players, but my grandfather really tried. He was funny.
You had what was his name? Karl Yastrzemski. With that name, he must have been a Jew.
Well, it was funny because he would distort the names of players to make them sound more Jewish. He would call Kurt Schilling, who's obviously not Jewish. He's like a diehard psycho Christian right-wing maniac. He would call him Kurt Schiller to make it sound. He would try to kid himself that they were Jewish. Chuck Knobloch, he called him Chuck Knobloch to make him sound more Jewish. And then when Sean Green, who was a good player, didn't end up being a great player for that long, but he had a few great seasons. When Sean Green, Green, a Jew, Sean Green, he came up for the first few years he was up, he was hot, and my grandfather loved him. He said, "No, that's a ball player. That guy's a ball player. That guy you need on your team."
Who was like the one famous Jewish baseball player?
Well, oddly enough, despite the fact that there's this thing amongst Jews that like we have elite representation in every category, even the ones that we're not really good at. It's part of the reasons why anti-Semitism exists, because a lot of anti-Semitism is based on envy, because the Jews find a way to be good at everything, even things they're not biologically inclined to be good at necessarily. So one of the elite baseball pitchers of all time didn't have a long career.
We have those secret labs.
Well, yeah. We don't want to let the word out about that, but Sandy Koufax was obviously an amazing pitcher.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
He was an amazing pitcher, but then also Hank Greenberg was an amazing hitter, and he was actually on pace to set the single-season home run record, and he never got pitched to. And it is actually an accepted theory, not just my grandfather's theory, that they walked him all the time to make sure he didn't break the record because he was Jewish. And so it's not that my grandfather was totally paranoid, but he did take it to a certain extreme where he hated the Yankees for that reason. A Bronx guy since 1920 hated the Yankees because they were anti-Semites.
You know who we need on this episode? Yeah.
Who's that? Yay. Yeah, we should have gotten Yay here for this.
Should have gotten him because he would have been very interested in this topic.
Now, the thing about the thing about the Fox News Kanye West interview is that obviously makes...
Now he's been, I don't know if you know, he's been thrown off social media for making anti-Semitic comments.
Yeah, I know, for the war on Jewish people, right? Whatever he said. I didn't read it that closely.
He said Puffy is controlled by Jews. And,
interesting.
And something else, yeah.
Look, that is the kind of content, not the anti-Semitic stuff, obviously, but like the interview that he gave to Tucker Carlson is the kind of content that people in our space look for, because that generates clicks, views, and engagement like nothing else. If there were anything usable there, we'd have used it and covered it. I'm watching it. I'm like, there's nothing even usable here. This is just too bizarre to even comment on. Like, there's no take you can give on this. This is like a Jackson Pollock painting. Like, what do you say about it? That's what it is. Like, you just stare at it. You don't know what to make of it.
It's like the lost Ava Braun Jackson Pollock commission.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Nobody knew he did work for the Nazis.
Exactly.
Hitler was a big fan of abstract expressionism.
Speaking of Nazis, we have some news about the.
I just want to say before we get off the Mets. So I grew up a mile from Shea Stadium, so being a Mets fan was obligatory. And for those,
that's right. You were born in Flushing.
I was born in Flushing, and for those of you who do not know, I shouldn't say this on the air, but I have a tour client tomorrow from Singapore who's really getting on my last nerve with the phone calls and the. Anyway, it's a cheap tour. I don't know why she keeps calling me, but besides that, I'm going to.
She's not calling tonight, is she?
She's fucking calling right now. Well, I better not show it. It'll have her name. But she's
like
calling
Walter
right.
Sobchak. No calls during league play.
I specifically told her not to call me. That I'd be doing something to text me. I hate people like that. Like what? Am I speaking fucking English? Right.
This is why I don't. This is why I don't work with people anymore. This is why I work on apps. As much as the gig economy is evil, I'd rather work for Skynet than with another human being. I'd take a robot over a human being any day now.
Yeah, I only work with animals usually. You're the exception.
Well, not really, but
not really.
That's what you think.
So for those of you not from New York or not steeped in baseball lore, they had to create the Mets because when Los Angeles stole the Dodgers, there were all these people who basically were never, ever, ever going to root for the Yankees. So they had to give them a team or just lose these people to baseball forever. They were just they just wouldn't have been baseball fans if you didn't give them a choice besides the Yankees. But the Mets inherited the Dodgers karma, which is basically to root for the Mets is a lesson in just a Kafkaesque process of hopes being dashed. And in the most bizarre way. That was what got me as a child. Like, the Mets don't just lose. They lose with a 20-run lead, and you go out for milk, and you come back, and they lost the game. It's just like, how is that even humanly possible? How could they have lost? They were up by 20 runs. Like, how the fuck did they lose that game? I just went to the store for a second. What the hell did they do? So by the time I was 8, I was completely turned off to sports. Because of the Mets. If it was not for the Mets, I would have been a sports fan. If I had grown up in the Bronx, I would have been a sports fan. But because I grew up in Flushing, by the time I was 8, I said, what's in it for me?
Well, the Mets I
don't see anything in this for me.
They ended up taking
getting my hopes dashed.
Well, they ended up taking a wild card spot this year. They were in first place the whole season, and the Braves caught up to them at the very end. And now they're a wild card team.
All right, so I could have waited 45 years.
No, but what I'm saying is, see, you don't understand baseball enough to understand what I'm saying. They were in first place for almost the entire season, and the Braves caught them at the last minute and overtook them. So now they took a wild card, which is worse than winning the division.
You know what that sounds like? It sounds like the fucking Mets.
Like the Mets, exactly. All right, we're going to start the program. I do want to address Getting Guys' comment here. Keaton, you're so close to being a leftist.
That's an interesting comment.
Yes, the social relations concerning employment really suck, but people respond to their environments. Change the environment, change the people.
What does this have to do with the Mets?
No, he's talking about me not wanting to work for people where I'd rather work for a machine, for an app, than with other people. That's what he's responding to there.
Oh, I see.
And I admit to you that, yes, in theory, everything you're saying is true. And if I were to put my money where my mouth is politically, yeah, I probably would join a workplace with other people. But I'm not up for it. I'm really not up for it. I'm really exhausted with other people. This is about all the human contact I could take. Russell through a screen and all of you. I don't get along well with others in real life, believe it or not. I'm not fond of others. If we lived in the same
neighborhood, we'd have a fist fight.
Yeah, I don't work well with others. I really don't.
Yeah, 69 Mets. I was born that summer. My mother saved all the newspapers. I had the newspaper. I think somebody stole it from me. I had the newspaper of the 69 Mets. That was an eventful summer. The summer I was born, Woodstock, Chappaquiddick, the 69 Mets, the moon landing, and
the Manson murders.
The Manson murders were all that summer. Yeah. I was actually born the day before the LaBianca murders.
Right.
The LaBianca murders were on August 8th.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. That's interesting. All right, so let's get to the program here this evening. I had a Nazi segue earlier because we're going to talk about Ukraine. Speaking of Nazis, ha 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 ha. But we are going to talk about the Russia-Ukraine war a little bit here. We talked about it quite a bit last week. Of course, this past week, you had Joe Biden telling a room full of donors off camera, off mic, this was not recorded, but it leaked to the press, that he told a room full of Democratic donors that we're closer now to nuclear Armageddon than we have been at any point since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Great record to run on there.
And then he recreated the Cuban Pete scene from The Mask, which really blew their minds. Nobody saw that coming. They were like, the nuclear part is crazy, but who knew he could dance like that?
Right, exactly, yeah. I mean, that's something you want to brag about. That's really a feather in your cap as the leader of the free world, that we're closer to nuclear Armageddon than we have been at any point in, 50-something years. Well done, sir. Well done. Now, his predecessor had a few things to say about the Ukraine war at a rally in Nevada. I believe this was either last night or the night before. President Donald Trump was rallying supporters of Adam Laxalt, who is a Nevada Senate candidate. And the topic of Ukraine came up in his monologue, and he advocated for peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. So let's hear from the unhinged, insane, danger to the free world, Donald Trump.
We must demand the immediate negotiation of a peaceful end to the war in Ukraine, or we will end up in World War III, and there will be nothing left of our planet, all because stupid people didn't have a clue. They didn't have a clue. They really don't understand. I rebuilt our military. I rebuilt our nuclear power. They don't understand what they're dealing with, the power of nuclear.
They have no idea the power of nuclear.
You cut it off right at the best part. War! What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again.
They all started toking up in the audience. The tie-dye came out. Actually, he had the Grateful Dead come on stage right after that.
I mean, one thing you got to give him, that went better than Woodstock 99.
And that's true. That's true. Not a high bar, but he certainly cleared that bar.
Cleared it. Yeah, it's incredible that Donald Trump, the arch conservative of his era, such as he is, at least that's how he's perceived, he's the peacenik. He's the peacenik. This is why I keep saying I don't know what right and left mean anymore. Even the progressives, they're not saying boo about possible nuclear Armageddon. Nothing. So where's AOC? Where is she? Where is Ilhan Omar? Where are all these people? Where's Tlaib?
Yeah, is this not a major issue? Like, this is not just one issue among many. This seems like a pretty important issue. You know, it seems like something you'd want to chime in on. And when you talk about Donald Trump as the peacenik, he is the de facto peacenik, whether he is ideologically committed to peace. Obviously, we were joking. Trump himself is not a hippie. He's not a pacifist by any means. But he understands instinctively and puts that instinct into practice when he comes to just the very natural human conclusion that war is not good for anybody. Because war is not good for anybody except the defense contractors, right? And so what sense does it make to entangle us in this war? From a nationalist perspective, he thinks this is madness. This is nonsense. And what he said there about, you're not going to have life on this planet. You're going to have nuclear winter. I mean, this is not a joke. This is not a game here. I mean, it's just extraordinary. Just absolutely extraordinary that he's out there making these points and none of the so-called left are out there making these points. That's what you need. What you need now are peace talks. Right. And when you talk about how Donald Trump is the peacenik, I've said this a million times, and we did a whole episode actually on this before we got a bigger audience. So I'm going to repeat some points that I made way back when. So for our longtime listeners, please bear with me. You may want to go check on the Mets score for 5 minutes and come back. You might have heard some of this in prior episodes. But if we look at the timeline here, 2008, George W. Bush urges Ukraine to join NATO. 2010, Ukraine is taken over, perhaps. A pro-Putin leader is installed in 2010, so the momentum obviously stops on that. In 2014, that government is overthrown, supposedly not with help from the West or with the U.S., but obviously there were leaked phone calls between Western interests, U.S. interests, and the emerging post-Maidan Ukrainian government as to how to structure a post-revolutionary government. And when those leaks happened, we did the same thing that we did, and by we, I mean the Obama White House, the U.S. leadership. We said that this was a Russian hack and the Russians leaked the information. We made all of these excuses, except we did not deny the validity of the recordings themselves. So we were caught. We were caught as meddling.
You would think the media
in their
would
political
be
affairs.
Interested in that.
Right. No, but no.
In explaining how this happened.
Same thing when the DNC leaks happened in 2016.
I will wager to you the vast majority of people who primarily get their news through the Times, through Washington Post, don't even know about those tapes.
Right, exactly. They don't know about those tapes. No, that was totally buried. It was a story, and then it was no longer.
Yeah, if you told them that, they'd call you a conspiracy theorist.
Exactly. 2016, during that campaign, obviously, we all know how that turned out, right? Trump is a Putin puppet. That was a major point of the campaign against Trump, is that he is in the pocket of Vladimir Putin. Trump then wins. And I'm going to play this piece of tape again because this is critical to understanding how we got here. Trump wins on November 9th, 2016, whatever it was, 2:37 a.m., he is declared the president-elect. Then there is a lame duck period where Obama is still in the White House, but Trump is incoming. On New Year's Eve, 2016 into 2017, during this lame duck period where Trump is going to take office in 3 weeks, John McCain, Amy Klobuchar, and Lindsey Graham, right, go to Ukraine, to a military combat outpost.
Otherwise known as the Three Horsemen.
Well, I was actually going to say, I was going to make some other kind of gender-bending joke about Graham and Klobuchar in there, but I couldn't pull it together all at once. So we'll have to go with yours. They went to a combat outpost in Ukraine, and here's what they said. Now, it's very important. Remember when this happened. This happened post-election of Donald Trump, but pre-inauguration of Donald Trump. All right? Now let's hear what these guys have to say.
Your fight is our fight.
Ваша боротьба – це наша боротьба.
2017 will be the year of offense.
Рік 2017 рік буде ріком нападу.
All of us will go back to Washington and we will push the case against Russia.
Ми всі повернемося до Вашингтону і ми будемо відстоювати санкції проти Росії.
Enough of a Russian aggression.
Досить вже російської агресії.
It is time for them to pay a heavier price.
Час вже, щоб вони заплатили важчу ціну.
I believe you will win. I am convinced you will win, and we will do everything we can to provide you with what you need to win.
Я вірю в те, що ви виграєте, переможете. Я переконаний в тому, що ви переможете, і ми вам допоможемо всіма можливими засобами.
Це те ж саме гільзи з ворожих БМП, які розмальовані художництвом радянська.
There they are.
З Новим роком, дорогі мої!
All right. Now, remember what Lindsey Graham there said. He said 2017 will be a year of offense. We are going to go back to Washington and make the case against Russia. Well, make the case against Russia to who? Not to Barack Obama. He's got 3 weeks left in office. They were going to make the case against Russia to Donald Trump, except they never really could make the case to Donald Trump that this war is necessary, that a confrontation on this scale with Russia was necessary. They could never convince him to go along with it, which is why, more than anything else, the media hated Donald Trump, The Lincoln Project, GOPers hated Trump, and the, neocon hawkish Democrats hated Trump. This is why, more than anything else, they hated Trump. The system will allow for a lot. It will not allow you to stall the war machine. The war machine must keep cranking no matter what. And it is very obvious from the timeline I just laid out, especially including that clip right there, that just about everyone in Washington, D.C. wanted a confrontation with Russia on this scale, except for Donald Trump. And oddly enough, the only one other man who was able to stop it, was Barack Obama, who said that Ukraine will always be more important to Russia than it is to the U.S., and that was his rationale for not spilling blood over this.
Credit is due. Yeah.
Right. He did, but he still pushed it up to that point. He wasn't willing to take it to that point, which, like you just said, credit where credit is due, fine. But oddly enough, Trump and Obama seem to be the only two people in that town who did not want something like this to happen. And Trump took it even further, and he took it to this sort of, because there were all these sort of rhetorical embraces, and because he and Putin are both these sort of nationalist strongmen, it was very easy to lump them as cut from the same style of leadership and things like that. Which, all right, I mean, fair enough. But the constant assault on Donald Trump from the second he stepped foot in that office to even now is all about the fact that he did not give the bipartisan establishment the war that they wanted. I don't see how you can really come to any other conclusion when you consider the timeline and look at footage like that.
Yeah, and if you remember, at one point, pretty early in his presidency, I remember Trump saying, "Wouldn't it be a good thing if we had a good relationship with Russia?" And they all, see, they have a P tape. He's controlled by Russia, which is just crazy. It was so clear, and this is what the people who really got sucked into Russiagate and that media bubble will never really understand. Donald Trump substantively was certainly no worse than George Bush. Quite a bit better on the substance. In terms of style, okay, I just saw this. This is kind of a preview of my latest TikTok rant, which I'm having technical difficulties with. Okay, so we know the women on The View are the stupidest people on earth and are about as qualified to judge politics as I am to play for the Mets. So Sunny Hostin was talking about Ron DeSantis, and she pivots to how racist Trump is. Okay, all right. So what about people that you would welcome on your show and would never say anything like that about? What about your current president, who said that we have to not desegregate schools because he doesn't want his children and your children growing up in a racial jungle, who mass incarcerated 2 generations of people of color with his crime bill? What about Bill Clinton, who announced his candidacy for president at the birthplace of the KKK with a phalanx of black prisoners behind him, and just in case anyone missed the message, with Cooter from the Dukes of Hazzard literally standing to his right? How about Hillary Clinton, who said in 2008, "I am the candidate of hardworking people, white people"? I am not. That is an exact quote. You can look it up if you've never heard it.
Should hardworking Americans, white Americans.
White
Americans. The exact quote. If
white American. That's the exact quote, you geek. Yes.
Just want to know, because people are going to Google it and they're going to think you're lying.
You're right.
Because it's going to be Americans and not people. Right.
Especially our friend on the comments who's stalking us.
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly.
That guy's going to wind up. He's going to wind up at our house.
Got to cross your T's and dot your I's for this crowd.
Fucking psycho. Yeah. So what about all those people? Okay. So Donald Trump's a racist. Okay, fine. But what about all the people you embrace who actually there's more public record evidence that they are racists, and their racism has manifested in policy? In terms of Donald Trump, this racism manifested in being the first president to undo some of the insane sentencing guidelines that the current president laid out in his crime bill. He was the first president to give permanent funding to historically black colleges and universities. I'm not saying Donald Trump was a great president. I'm not even saying he's not a racist. As a guy from Queens, I can smell that guy. He sounds exactly like a guy from a corner bar where I grew up. And I grew up about 3 miles away from where Donald Trump grew up. Not on the rich side of town, but pretty close to where he grew up. So I'm not even saying that's not true. But what I'm saying is nobody takes you fucking people seriously when you say these things about Donald Trump, because it so obviously only applies to your political enemies. And even when the people on your side are actually worse than someone like Donald Trump, you won't say anything about it. You'll cover it up. Look what they did to Tara Reid. Right in the middle. How do you expect people to take you seriously when you've been telling everyone for decades you cannot shame women? You have to take them seriously when they make these accusations. And as soon as somebody made an accusation that was going to create a lot of problems for your anointed one, the nuts and sluts defense came right out of the filing cabinet. Right? All of a sudden, they're questioning her psychology. They're questioning her sanity. They're questioning her credibility. All the old tactics. They all came right out. So this is why nobody takes the liberals, and particularly the elite liberals, seriously when they say these things about Donald Trump. Because a lot of the things you say about Donald Trump can not only be said about your own people, a lot of your own people are actually worse than Donald Trump. And you'll never say anything about that. So why should we take you seriously on this? Particularly when Donald Trump is seemingly the only one out there saying, yeah, World War III, maybe not a good idea. Maybe we don't want to do that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right. Should we move on to Bill Burr?
Sure.
All right. Let's move on to Comrade Bill Burr. Bill Burr on his podcast, I guess, does some fan talkback work. And he...
Hey, before we move on, do you have an answer for that?
No, I do not have an answer for that. Facebook user. This is, you know what? I'm glad you put this comment on the screen. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to your question. You're asking, where can you watch the banned CBS report on the weapons deal to Ukraine? I am not sure about that. So, unfortunately, I can't help you there. But the reason you're coming up on our end as Facebook user, unless you have some sort of blocked account or some privacy setting, if you are watching on Facebook in our Facebook group, which is Do Your Own Due Dissidents, there is some kind of issue with StreamYard group interactions where the comments are coming through, I believe, in this way as like anonymous comments. We might not even be getting them at all from the group. I don't know if you're coming from the page, but there's a problem with us reading comments from the group. So if you're watching on Facebook and you want to be sure that we see your comments, go over to the Do Dissidents page, not the Do Your Own Do Dissidents group, and comment from there. All right. So Bill Burr had some things to say about socialism and capitalism on his podcast here. There's a couple clips that we will play back to back, but let's get to this. This is some pretty fun stuff.
Socialism. Hi, Bill, you redheaded fuck. I really appreciate the bluntness of that. How are you? Last week you mentioned you don't know why people demonize socialism. I was really taken aback at that statement. Oh, Jesus Christ. Every country that has tried socialism has failed, and it's responsible for tens of millions of deaths. All right, so would you say capitalism is working? And it is not, when like, what is it? Like 99% of the wealth is in like fucking 2% of the people's hands. All of these tent cities, you're telling me this is working? You don't think capitalism is responsible for tens of millions of deaths? Anyway, Russia, Germany, China, Cuba, and most recently Venezuela have tried or right now are socialist countries. As far as I know, whatever Cuba was trying to do, we prevented them from doing with a fucking embargo or whatever the hell we did. We've been fucking with them for 60 years. So I think you're looking at like what a lot of people do is you look at your own country through rose-colored glasses the same way you look at your own sports team like, oh, my team doesn't cheat, but your team does.
All right, that's part one. I thought that was pretty well said. He echoed the exact... I wrote a whole article about this after those Amazon workers were killed in their warehouse after being forced to stay on the job while the tornado warnings were going off in the area. And that happened I forget, that was probably almost a year ago now. But I wrote a little piece saying, hey, why don't we start counting deaths under capitalism the way we count deaths under communism? Every person who starved to death under Joseph Stalin was tallied as a death under communism. So are those warehouse workers deaths under capitalism? What about the 50,000 Americans who died every year until because they could not afford medicine? And then after the ACA was passed, that number was reduced by about half. Excellent work. Only 25,000 people in the richest country on earth now die every year because they cannot afford medicine. However many years that's been going on, as long as you've been a country, that's a lot of deaths under capitalism right there too. You can add those to the list, right? Sure. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, there's that incremental change we hear so much about.
Yeah, exactly.
Eventually we get to 5,000 and that's good. This is why. And this is really brainwashing. It shows you how brainwashed people are and how effective that brainwashing is. Deaths under communism, yes, we blame it on the communist system. Deaths under capitalism, we blame on the people who die under capitalism. We put the blame on them. They did something wrong. They were irresponsible with their lives. They didn't manage their lives properly.
Right.
Capitalism
had
nothing to do with
individual.
capitalism. Right. That has to do with you. You had all the tools you needed to have a thriving, successful life, but because of flaws in your character, you wound up dead. You wound up in a bad situation. It's not the system, it's you. The system is perfect. And so these deaths don't count as deaths of capitalism. They're human tragedies. They're forces of nature very often. Oh, this town was wiped out. Well, economically, well, that's globalism. There's nothing we can do about it. They're building cheaper in China. There's nothing. That's a force of nature. That has nothing to do with the system we have. Germany, for some reason, they're able to write trade deals that don't destroy entire sections of Germany, but we can't do that. Has nothing to do with the fact that we let the corporations write our trade bills. No, it's just these forces of global economics are forcing our hand. There's nothing we can do about it. And it was Clinton really perfected that line. He really perfected that. Yes, I wish we could do something about it, and we are going to do something about it. We're going to retrain you for the jobs of the future, which never came.
Right, exactly. John Small asks, can Amazon be charged criminally for what I just said? I'm glad you asked that question because I did actually misspeak. So there were workers at a candle factory who died in the factory because they were not allowed to leave and go home. The Amazon workers who died were not in the warehouse. They were actually driving for Amazon. They were out delivering packages when they heard the sirens go off. And then what happened was their dispatch said, you cannot come back to the warehouse and take shelter. You have to stay out on your route. And that's what happened. And part of the reason why they probably cannot be criminally charged for that, I mean, they should be, but what they have been able to do is they've been able to hide behind a loophole where a lot of their drivers are technically independent contractors. And so technically they were not threatened with termination. You don't fire an independent contractor. Right. You just say, we're not going to hire you again if you don't do it the way we want. So that's how they sort of weaseled their way around that. But thank you for bringing that up because I did misspeak there. It's been almost a year since I wrote that piece. So thank you for catching that inadvertently, but you caught it nonetheless. But yeah, I mean, but the point you made, Russell, is a fantastic one, which is that capitalism defers responsibility to the individual, and that's its out. Because, well, it's not capitalism's fault. All we're doing is freeing you to go as far as you can go. And if you can't go as far as to be able to afford medicine, well, that's because you're a fuck up. And if that costs you your life, too bad. That's not on us. That's on you. And that is how they weasel out of this. So Burr went on.
Become a Nietzschean Superman or die!
Right, exactly. All right, Burr went on here. Let's because he gets even into some, I think, much more profound points in this next clip. Good.
You're really sort of looking the other way with what capitalism has done to other countries. All the sweatshop labor, all the wars we've fought in over air quote freedom, where most of it is about, natural resources. All of these fucking countries where we've gone in and, stuck in heads of the government that are going to do what we want to do so we can fucking take advantage of them. To sit there and look at capitalism like it's, I don't know, dude. All right, I took off my Birkenstocks. I'm going to read the rest of this here. Okay, socialism all starts the same way. Create a boogeyman like corporations, the rich, or a race. Oh, yeah, we've never done that in this country. We've never created a boogeyman. There's never, Jesus Christ, buddy. Blame them for all your problems. Yeah, we never did that. The leaders then promised to fix all the problems. Oh, boy. Slowly, the government starts to control every aspect of your life. Why does this sound so familiar? Promise that aren't they like recording all our phone conversations now? And we're slowly on our way to getting microchipped. Promise that everybody will have the same equity and outcome. This creates mediocrity, loss of the middle class. Loss of the middle class. Where have I seen that before? Of innovation, corporations are buying houses now. They're just buying them up so they can fucking Airbnb. Like literally the American dream, buying a house. They're going to take that away in this country. That reduces the tax money coming out into the government. Buddy, I can't fucking read all of this horse shit. This is everything that we're doing too. Capitalism. Okay, I'll get to the end here. Capitalism. No, you know what? Let's just read all of this because it's fucking hilarious that he's acting like none of this is happening in this country. And you know what's funny about people? You don't like it, get the fuck out of here. This is my favorite thing ever. Yet you can look at your sports team and be like, what the fuck is this coach doing? And then nobody goes like, you don't go fucking root for somebody else. No, I'm criticizing it because I love it and I want it to win.
All right. So that point about corporations buying up houses was a very, very strong point to bring up in that context, because what you're seeing now is an economy go to shit, but housing prices are remaining through the fucking roof. Mm-hmm. That's because corporations, which are hoarding most of the wealth in this country, are doing exactly what he's saying. They're buying up houses and they're renting them out. That is a feature and a function of capitalism. That is what capitalism allows for. Capitalism, it's in the word capital. Capital. You gain advantage in capitalism by accruing capital and using the capital you already have to gain further advantage, i.e. more capital. And so the more capital you gain, the easier it is to turn that existing capital into even more capital. And that's why these corporations are able to buy up these houses. And the people with not enough capital to buy a house are then forced to rent the house from the corporation who owns the capital and bought the house. And under capitalism, there is no way to stop that, because capital is a snowball under capitalism. The more it gets, the bigger it gets, the more powerful it is, the faster it rolls down the hill. You cannot stop it. The way you stop it is for government to step in and make a rule. Excuse me, no. Corporations, you cannot buy as many houses as you want and rent them out to the paupers. No, you cannot do that. But that is not an example of capitalism with rules. That's like the fucking Liz Warren thing and the moderate Democrat thing. Well, we need capitalism, but we need rules. Capitalism with rules is not capitalism. What you are describing in that case is a regulated market. And almost everybody who thinks they are defending capitalism, what they are actually defending are regulated markets. Regulated markets are not unique to capitalism. Regulated markets existed long before capitalism, and they will exist long after capitalism. Regulated markets are perfectly compatible with socialism. And so people are very, very confused about this because, yeah, we need capitalism, but we need certain checks on it. Capitalism has no checks on it. Capitalism means the unlimited accumulation of capital, and the more you gain, the easier it is to get even more. Anybody who's ever been broke and then come into money, they will tell you, I haven't come into money yet, but ask anybody. It's a lot easier to make your 100,000th dollar than it is to make your 100th dollar.
Sure. Well,
try increasing your net worth from $100 to $1,000. It's way, way tougher than it is to increase your net worth from $99,000 to $100,000. Why? Because when you're going for that 100,000th dollar, you got 99 grand worth of capital to help you earn it.
Right.
And that's what capitalism is. And under that system, there is nothing stopping corporations from buying up all the houses in the country and turning this into what many would assume from 30,000 feet is a communist country where the state has all the power and everybody else lives in dirt. So there you have it.
Now, I would argue if you made your $100,000 investing in GameStop, you probably lost all that already, because that's not a way to make money. That's like the old Bugs Bunny joke. It's a great trick, but I can only do it once. You can only pull GameStop once. If you didn't take that money and buy a pizzeria or some shit, you're a fucking idiot. All these guys, they thought the gravy train was going to last forever. And actually, they looked at this. Most of the people who made that GameStop money have lost it all at this point. All of it.
Oh, really?
They stayed in. They couldn't. It's like any gamblers, man. You know, most gamblers are not going to walk away a winner. They just can't. That's why the house always wins, right? They make that 100. They think they can roll it over into 200. Pretty soon, you don't have money. You're given hand jobs behind the casino to buy a bus ticket back home. So house prices have never been less affordable than they are today, ever in the history of the country. This is why. Some of the home prices have started to come down, but it's not nearly enough to compensate for the interest rates.
Right.
The Fed is basically going berserk with raising the interest rates, and they have been clear. They're trying to create unemployment. They're trying to create a recession. They're not using the R word, but what else? What are you describing? You're trying to bring down the economy. You're trying to bring down demand, and you're trying to increase unemployment. That's a fucking recession, sunshine. Whether you call it that or not.
There is a supply issue being created by what Bill Burr just said, which is the corporate, hoarding of housing.
Right. Well, and you also have people are disincentivized to sell because what are they going to buy? Suppose you're about to retire. You were going to sell that house. You don't need it anymore. You're going to buy the condo. You want to pay 6.7% interest rates. So that's making people stay in their homes as well. Like what you're describing, that is part of it. That is, yes, BlackRock, anonymous Facebook that's part of the problem. But it is also Fed policy and the blunt instrument of interest rate hikes that they're using to try to get inflation under control. This is probably not going to end well. I think you probably will have a crash in housing prices. Ultimately, we're just not there yet. As of now, it's almost impossible. You got to be crazy to buy a house right now, because you're at the worst possible moment of high interest rates where the prices haven't come down enough for it to really make it to reflect
what the actual market value of the house is or might be after a crash. Yeah. Let's just get to a few of these chats here. By the way, everybody, patrons and paid Substack subscribers have call-in access to this show. So if you would like to sign up, please do. Patreon.com/DoDissidents. We had a few new signups this last week, so we thank you guys very, very much for that. So I just wanted to plug that for a second. Go ahead.
All right. Yes, we're talking about actually doing a music video of town car drivers and pizza delivery people singing that.
But they owe their soul to the company store.
You can ask Keaton. I pitched that to him.
He did. And I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me post an audition notice at Actors Access because the whole scene has become so fucking tight-assed you could pull a diamond out of these fucking people's sphincters. Would you like without having a script, like the idea of creating a political sketch ensemble? They wouldn't let me post an audition notice for that. So I'm going to go to Backstage. If any of our people know anyone at Backstage, just tell them I'm coming. Yes, we would definitely have Richard Wolff as a guest in a heartbeat, and we'd probably agree on just about everything.
Yeah, I love Richard Wolff. He's great. And actually, I went to the college he teaches at for, 2.5 semesters? So I could have maybe had him if I were a better student. I don't know if he taught back at UMass Amherst back when I was there, but I think he's been there for quite a long time. I'm not sure. Love for pizza. What's wrong is the corporate capture of government so that it only works for corporations and the 1%. This means that both political parties work against workers. Well, yes, that's true. But once again, I would just highlight the corporate capture of government is inevitable under capitalism. Because under capitalism, everything can be bought, which means everything is for sale, including political power. And so if you don't put guardrails on that, then you will inevitably, under capitalism, have corporate capture of government. The way to stop that from happening is to come together as a people and decide we are going to pass certain rules, i.e. laws. But those laws do not usher in a sort of like utopian version of capitalism where everybody treats everybody fairly and gets along and works to each other's betterment because there are rules. No, what those rules represent are what I said before, regulated markets. And you can have regulated markets under socialism, just like you can have them under capitalism. And I would argue regulated markets under socialism work a lot better. We're talking about means of production here. That's ultimately what these economic systems have to differentiate themselves. Under communism, the state owns a means of production. Under capitalism, the ownership class owns a means of production. Under socialism, the workers own it. Not the state, not the corporate fat cats, the workers. Now, what that means put in practice, right, is that workers have as much of a stake in the output of their labor as they possibly can. That's what a union is. A union is an engine of socialism. It's not an engine of communism. They're not asking anything from the state. They're asking something from the company. What they're saying is we want less power and money in the hands of the ownership class, the people with the capital, the investor class, the shareholder class, and we want more money and power in the hands of the people doing the work that make the company move, i.e. the unionists, the laborers. That's labor ownership, labor power. That's socialism. That's neither communism nor capitalism. And that's basically what we're talking about here. But when you talk about what's wrong with capitalism is that we've let the corporations run wild, well, that is a feature of capitalism.
Right.
Under capitalism, corporations must be able to run wild.
That it's going to end there. That
it can't not, by definition.
Capitalism, the final stage of capitalism, according to Marx, was that they're going to eat the treasury. That the last thing they're going to get is the money that the government has.
Right, because what's stopping them?
They're going to take that too.
And what's stopping them? That's what you have to ask.
Well, that's where we are now. That's where we are. They looted the treasury.
Exactly.
I just want to say, Love for Pizza really does have a bunch of videos of pizza on her channel.
Are you a her Love for Pizza? I mean, there's a picture of a her on your profile, but we're assuming that you're a her. But if you're not, you can please correct us there.
No, she really does love that pizza, man. She's got videos in Italian about how to make pizza up there. Yeah.
Oh, nice, excellent. Maybe you can sponsor the show. We love pizza.
Yes, yeah, we love pizza too. Why don't you become a donor?
Yeah,
become a patron. Become a patron.
By the way, no fucking super chats yet. We're waiting. We're still waiting here. We're still fucking waiting here. Been on the air for 49 minutes and 54 seconds.
We didn't get nothing out of you guys. What the fuck? Fucking disgrace.
You cheap fucks. Exactly. All right, let's talk about some midterm 2022 polls here because it is Sunday, October 9th. We have not talked about the midterms in a while. However, The midterms are now less than 1 month away. The midterms are November 8th. We will be doing our marathon live stream that night. We are also going to do a full week of live streams heading up to the midterms. We'll be really doing deep dives on all the different races, all the key races, House races, governor's races, Senate races. We'll have guests on for the midterm show. Nobody does election coverage better than us in this space. We could say that 100%. We are on for 8 hours. It's a lot of fun. We bust out the beer and the pizza. Love for pizza. Show up. We got beer and pizza
between the races.
What's that?
We even cover tension between the races.
Yeah, there you go. And Love for Pizza should show up. We get the beer and the pizza out. We're up all night. It's a real party. It's going to be a lot of fun. But you may have noticed
it's cold in here. You know what would help me pay the heating bill? Some of those there super chats.
The lights are flickering. Are the lights coming off? Uh-oh.
Oh. But I better call Con Ed with some of that super chat money.
Say, hey, don't worry. I'll have the money I'll have the bill paid tomorrow.
I'll have the money.
Those super chats are coming in.
I know our people are good for it.
Yeah, I know they wouldn't leave me hanging.
Yeah, I know they're there for us.
Exactly. Anyway, as you may have noticed, the midterm polling has tightened significantly. There has been a subtle but noticeable swing in polling back to the Republican side in a couple of key Senate races, actually a few key Senate races. You now have the Georgia Senate race in pretty much a dead heat. A recent poll had Herschel Walker leading Raphael Warnock by 2 points, 49-47. You have now Dr. Oz within the margin of error in Pennsylvania against John Fetterman. The Cook report switched that from a lean Democrat race to a toss-up. That is very, very significant for reasons that we will get into soon. And then Adam Laxalt, who Trump was rallying for last night in Nevada, is actually up by an average of 1.7 points against incumbent Democratic Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. That is hugely significant because that would be a Republican pickup. That is where a Republican Senate candidate is actually defeating a Democratic incumbent. And if they win there, that allows Fetterman to beat Oz and have the race remain at 50-50, at which point, if the Republicans can knock off one more incumbent, they would win control of the Senate. The fact that the Cook report has moved Pennsylvania from lean blue to toss-up is also very important because the Cook report is very widely read and respected on Capitol Hill. And even if Fetterman hangs on and beats Dr. Oz, the fact that the Cook report switched that to a toss-up means that Democrats are now pouring a ton of money into that race that they would have been able to pour elsewhere had that race not gotten so tight. So, in other words, they could have helped Masto hang on in, her race with money that they're now having to put in PA to try and fend off Oz. And so you're definitely seeing trending back to the GOP. Data for Progress, a liberal think tank, definitely a blue team think tank, just put out a poll that had Republicans +2 on the generic ballot. That's the first time that Republicans have led on the generic ballot in quite a while. They are still expected to win the House, but they have not led on the nationwide generic ballot in a while. And so you're seeing a lot of trends back to the GOP despite the Roe versus Wade overturn, despite the Inflation Reduction Act. Oh, who knew that wouldn't help Democrats that much? And so you are seeing polls start to tighten. It's shaping up to be a very unpredictable midterm.
It has Inflation Reduction right in the name.
Yeah, but like I said to our friend Matt Ho, it's not going to reduce
because science is right in the name.
Well, that was the design flaw, is that even the experts were saying none of these measures will reduce inflation for at least a couple of years, not months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so as I told our friend Matt Ho, I said, if you call something the Coke and Hookers Act, you have to deliver Coke and Hookers. You can't not have the Inflation Reduction Act reduce inflation. Hey, Tom Stratton came through with $2. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. Russell will get his electric company on the phone immediately.
Yeah, for
another few
minutes.
Right, exactly.
I keep telling. I called him up. I was like, "Yo, we got a TikTok now, man. I got your money. I got your money, man.
I got TikTok right now. Things are happening.
That's where it's at now.
Things are happening, man.
I'm like Dirk Diggler trying to get the studio open at the end of Boogie Nights.
Right.
The magic, that's ours. The tapes are yours, but the magic is ours. Oh, I like that. Angry Lefty told us to go get our fucking shine box. I like that. I like your style, Angry Lefty. I'll give you
like your style. You want money? Go get your fucking shine box. There we go. And then didn't Love for Pizza have something? She said,
apparently
you want a tip?
That's a dude.
Go home and get
Wear
your
an
fucking
umbrella
shine box.
It is a dude. Okay, there you go. I had a feeling. But anyway, yeah. I mean, look, I have a couple theories as to why these polls are tightening. But one of the reasons why these polls are tightening is because Democratic enthusiasm in major cities around these different key states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Georgia, that enthusiasm is not there. And here's an interesting piece of video that we actually pulled off of friend of the show, Marcel Dixon's Twitter account. This was, I guess, someone he follows just filmed CNN off the TV, so it's a little bit of a sloppy looking thing, and the in and out points are not exactly ideal because this was not a carefully curated piece of video. But here is Bakari Sellers, who, by the way, one of the most rabid anti-progressive black commentators in media, talking to and agreeing with, it seems, Nina Turner, who was also on CNN, talking about voter enthusiasm in key cities, in key states, heading into the midterm. So let's take a look.
Just as many people have been doing, but it ain't just Atlanta. I mean, it's Philadelphia in the race in Pennsylvania. It's Cleveland in the race with Tim Ryan and J.D. Vance. It's Orlando and Miami and Val Demings' race. And so Democrats have to do a better job, particularly, and I can't wait for my phone to blow up after I say this, but particularly with black men. You just can't come to black men after Labor Day and say, come vote for us every 2 years. There has to be a more direct, engaged approach with black male voters who, by all intents and purposes, after African-American women, are the second largest turnout base. And that's just something that we haven't done forever, and it drives me crazy.
So you're in Ohio, tell us.
I am, and I'm amen in what Bakari is saying. I mean, the Democratic Party often leaves out the whole swath of black men. And black men matter too, their votes matter, and they are very much an integral part of the success of the Democratic Party. And so Bottoms is absolutely right. The enthusiasm gap is there, and we got to do a better job.
Of course the enthusiasm isn't there. I mean, who wants to get up and say, okay.
All right. So, like I said, this clip did not see that quote through to the end, unfortunately, because I would actually be very interested to see what she has to say to finish that. Donald grabbing by the pussy. Trump gave us $2. Thank you so much. You've lost all motivation in voting. Well, you are not alone.
All the best.
That's what this segment is about. Right. Yeah. All the best people have. That's what this segment is talking about right here.
All right. So
Lance Bottoms, obviously mayor of Atlanta. Go ahead.
From now on, I'm going to call her Nina. It's better than working in the mailroom Turner, because I think at this point she said, okay, all right, the Democratic Party has no use for me. I need to become a Democrat in good standing, or I'm going to wind up having to get a real job. So I better go do spin on CNN and project myself as a good soldier and push for Democratic wins in the midterms. And I think she's getting her mind right. That's what I'm saying. I'm seeing Tina Turner in the process of getting her mind right so that she can be, so that they won't oppose her so heavily next time she wants to run for something.
Yeah. Bakari Sellers, just a notorious enemy of the left flank of the Democratic Party.
So when you're sitting there coddling Bakari Sellers,
right?
I think the writing is on the wall. She was clearly coddling him in that clip.
Oh yeah, a lot of coddling going on there.
A lot of
coddling, a lot of cozying up to. Absolutely, absolutely. But look, when it comes to Georgia, obviously the mayor of Atlanta saying there is an enthusiasm gap that's affecting not only the Warnock-Walker race, but also the Stacey Abrams v. Kemp race. Kemp is now ahead well outside the margin of error to the point where it would now be very, very surprising if Abrams won that race. And look, Herschel Walker is a moron. I mean, the guy is a bona fide moron. And look, when I say moron, I'm not talking about a moron by politician standard. Because look, in all seriousness, people who run for national office are usually smart compared to the average person. Like even the dumb ones, like even George W. Bush probably has an IQ of, I would say, 97 to 108 range. You know what I mean? Like he's not dumb as compared to the average person. Herschel Walker is an actual moron by any standard. Like, this guy is an actual bona fide imbecile. And the fact that he is pulling ahead in that race must point to an enthusiasm gap in the Republicans' favor.
Look, we're race switching all of these movies and all of these roles. This is a race swapped version of Forrest Gump that he's doing.
Yeah, right. I mean, the guy is just... It's absolutely incredible and virtuoso. I don't have your comment. I would put it up there, but I lost it because the comments are coming in fast. Now, here you are. I'm going to laugh very loudly if he wins Georgia GOP Senate race. I mean, so will we. And I hope you'll tune into our election night watch party because that will be quite something if he is elected to the United States Senate. There was, of course, the scandal that came out about him as having paid to terminate one of his girlfriend's pregnancies. So there were a few different October surprises coming out right now. That's one. The Dr. Oz experimenting on puppies and pigs and rabbits is one more. But, you know, the October surprise phenomenon is a phenomenon because it is important to actually hit voters right before they go to vote. And I think what we're seeing right now is some of the outrage over Roe has dissipated a little bit, at least according to these polls. Now, Michael Moore on his Substack is putting out a whole chain of messages about how Democrats are going to kick ass on November 8th. And a large part of his theory...
It's Rovember 8th.
Rovember 8th. Well, that's what I mean. A large part of his theory
which is very strange at the same exact time we're having a Scooby-Doo reboot.
Yeah, right. I get it. That was a good one. Like that. We should have a kick drum punchline sound drop to put in there. It would call for it. Look,
I have a Casio. I could probably set that up.
There, you could set that up. If there is a hidden Roe vote, if there is a hidden vote of closeted pro-choice voters in red states, as there must have been in Kansas, then yeah, Democrats can certainly outperform these polls. But right now, there is definitely a shift back to the GOP because I just sense an overall lack of enthusiasm amongst the public. I sense an overall lack of energy, an overall lack of care, especially in a state like Georgia. I mean, I was talking to Russell about this offline earlier. Georgia, more than any other state in the country, pulled out all the stops for Democrats these past few years. They delivered the state for Joe Biden against all odds. Georgia had not gone for a Democrat. I think Bill Clinton won it. But even he, I think, only won it once, if I'm not mistaken. But that state has not gone blue in forever. Not only did they rally for Biden, they rallied against all odds to win not one, but 2 Senate seats to give Democrats control of the Senate. So there has just been a gargantuan effort amongst Georgia Democrats to hand Democrats the power that they have. And what did these people get for it? You really can't say they got much for it. Corporate media, Joe Scarborough likes to talk about... What's that?
They got the $1,200.
Yeah, 14? Right. They got that check, 14? The $1,400.
Yeah,
$1,400.
So,
I mean, what have they gotten? A lot of corporate media pundits talk about all the legislative accomplishments of Joe Biden. You know, about how he's gotten all these bills passed and all the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan. You know, what is the benefit you can point to ordinary people who actually busted their ass to give the Democrats this power that they have right now? Only to let Manchin and Sinema stymie their entire program. And so, of course, there's going to be low enthusiasm there, right? I mean, these voters have they've worked their ass off for you for a few years and gotten very, very little out of it. On a macro level,
I don't know,
party
man.
that says the
we've gotten
answer...
a very expanded definition of gender.
Yeah, well, that's not doing it. And you know what that's not doing it for? It's not doing it for black men. This is another thing that white liberals don't want to admit.
I saw polls that's like number 2 issue for them, actually.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Black men and Hispanic men. It's a very macho culture. It's an alpha male culture. The idea that men can call themselves women if they feel like it does not fly amongst the majority of black men, a very small minority of whom actually consider themselves liberal. Right? Yep. I mean, it is a socially conservative voting bloc. And so that culture war shit, as much as the white liberals like to jerk themselves off thinking they're being, so open-minded and open-hearted towards the marginalized, it's not actually winning you any real support amongst people who are actually in these marginalized groups. Very, very little, if any.
That's
especially in a southern state like Georgia.
Well, that's where really they have no idea how to respond to the fact that the more woke they get, the more people of color they lose. They just don't know how to even cope with that. How do you
this is the ultimate.
It just defies the whole mythology that there's this monolithic group of people, like basically everyone who's not a straight white male has the same opinion about everything, and they all have overlapping interests. They're all on the same page about everything, and that's just not real. Of course that's not reality. And they have no idea how to address it. The fact that Donald Trump did better with those communities than anyone since Nixon, they're not even curious about it, because once you start digging into that, their whole worldview falls apart. It doesn't hold up under the slightest scrutiny, and you have to scrutinize it to explain that.
Right. I mean, how's this for irony? Donald Trump, white supremacist, white nationalist, white nativist that he is, was elected president, and since he became president, the Republican Party has become more diverse, and the Democratic Party has become whiter.
Yep.
Explain that. Explain that. Have them explain that on MSNBC.
Look, there's why I keep saying, look, even if I don't like something, if it's successful, I guess I'll have to rail impotently like I have about, popular music for decades, but I can't say nobody wants to listen to this. That's an argument you'll never hear me make. I'll never say nobody wants to listen to this, because clearly people do. So it's my problem, right? It's my issue. But when you're talking about these things, they're deeply unpopular. They're not successful. This is why I very often bring this up when you're talking about the competitiveness of leftists. You cannot overstate how damaging it is to left causes to be associated with these privileged elite white people with their Latinx vernacular and their 58 genders. It's terrible for us. And a lot, as you point out, a lot of people of color, which is something they don't want to address because it undermines their whole worldview. A lot of people of color are conservative. I live in Harlem, man. Harlem has more churches per capita than anywhere in the country. You walk around Harlem on a Sunday morning, everyone's dressed up to go to church.
It's a very religious.
Not people that a woke message in regards to these things really appeal to.
It's a very religious culture. It's a very family-oriented culture. Big families. Big church-going crowd. Absolutely, and that just does not square. It doesn't jibe with the themes put forward by the, guilty white, mostly wealthy, or at least upper middle class woke libs.
Right. Look, you go up to the average person in Harlem and you ask them how they feel about drag shows for children, and you see what kind of response you're going to get. Okay, you're going to find out very quickly that this is not a monolith of marginalized peoples against the evil white person. You're going to find out that these people aren't with that, man. Not most of them. Very few of any stripe feel that's okay.
Look at friend of the show, Marcel Dixon, who we interviewed when he was running for Congress, and then we interviewed him about the Woman King movie since. You know, I mean, he is what a lot of people would describe as a left-wing radical on economic policy, right? Mm-hmm. When it comes to social policy, he is not pro-choice. We kind of got out of him that he was pro-choice until the baby has a heartbeat and brainwaves, so I guess that would mean he would make allowances for first trimester, a few weeks. I don't really know. I didn't press him on that, maybe as much as I should have at the time. But he's also very strong on issues of the southern border. You know, he's anti-immigration. Black men tend to be an anti-immigration voting bloc too. Not necessarily anti-immigration, but a strong border voting bloc, right? And so this just does not jibe with the narrative. It doesn't jibe with the narrative.
And Nicole says, I've populated black majority businesses. Overhearing and talking with black men in 2016 before the election, they were pro-Trump and especially against Hillary because they were anti-feminist. Listen, this comports with my experience. I was campaigning for Bernie in Harlem heavily in 2016. I didn't have to talk black men out of voting for Hillary. I had to talk them out of voting for Trump. This is a very untold story of that election. Yes, I encountered exactly what you're talking about, and I was very surprised by it.
Also, you know, look, in Latin America, in Africa, in a lot of these parts of the world, the leader is the strong man. The leader is a decadent strong man who, you know, gets to eat what he wants, fuck who he wants, do whatever the fuck he wants, and gets away with it all. Like, that's kind of the norm in many countries around the world. So the idea that, oh, Donald Trump, because we sort of kid ourselves in this country that the president is really just one of us and that any of us could be president if we want. That's where the whole who would you rather have a beer with thing comes from. Right. It comes from this sort of like fake premise that, yeah, the president's just an ordinary guy. Most places around the world, it's expected that the leader is going to be this sort of like thuggish, strongman type who gets away with shit that average people can't get away with. That's not really outside the norm in most places around the world. Again, it's the liberal class who has bought into the West Wing premise, which is that this system is the best on earth because it gives everybody a theoretical possibility, everybody a theoretical chance at climbing as high as their God-given potential will take them. And once you subscribe to that, Trump is he's really an offense to that because he represents the kind of person who should never climb that ladder. And the only reason he has climbed that ladder is because he's a rich kid from a rich family.
Right.
But again, that's not unusual in most places around the world. And it's not really that unusual here either. It's just that the people who happen to hate Trump most are the people who really invest in this myth of American meritocracy. You know, I mean, that's really what it is. We got a comment from Willie Bragg, who's the host of the Willie Bragg Show. Hey, Willie, good to see you commenting here. The trouble with today's left trying to be woke, they need to do it in a way which looks more like old school ACLU civil libertarians, not the Clintonistas who are PC Reaganites. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's true. I think a social libertarian is, a civil libertarian sort of framing would be ideal. Absolutely.
Well, and I think, and the reason I bring this up in this context, I don't think you can overestimate how much that has to do with the fact that the Democrats are never able to get sustainable momentum. As soon as they get some sustainable momentum, you got Jon Stewart, which we're going to do a segment on, arguing for performing surgeries on children. And I can't imagine something that would be as viscerally offensive to so many people as that. And particularly, I was listening to a really interesting film discussion today where they were looking at Bros, and the person had actually seen it, one of the few in America. And he's a pretty prominent, respected film commentator, Chris Gore. He's on Film Threat.
I think I've heard of him.
That's it. Yeah, he comments a lot. And apparently, spoiler for anybody who's planning on going to see Bros. So apparently there's a whole subplot about how the mother doesn't want her second grade children, or a teacher doesn't want the second grade children to be taught about LGBTQ issues. And, the big, it's a comedy. So the big resolution is she comes around and brings the whole second grade class to the new LGBTQ museum at the end. And Chris Gore said on the show, the problem with all these people is none of them have fucking kids. The people who write these things do not have fucking kids. They do not understand that as a parent, it is for me to decide when my child is ready to absorb things like that. Just like it's up to me to decide when my child can watch a Friday the 13th movie and be ready to process that in their brain. It is not for you to come and tell me that my 7-year-old must juggle these concepts that I do not feel my child is ready to handle. So when you keep pushing in this direction, you get backlash from parents, and particularly when you have built your party around the suburban wine moms. These are exactly the people that you cannot afford to lose and piss off. I personally believe this is why the Democrats keep losing momentum. Obviously, inflation, there's a feeling that there's a certain chaotic quality to the country ever since Joe Biden became president. Some of that can be blamed on him. Some of it really can't. Some of it is a result of the aftermath of COVID.
Yeah. But look, sorry, go ahead. I'll let you finish that because I have something to add to that too.
Yeah, I mean, this is something else I want to cover because Rick is saying, that's why they call them groomers. There is actually a gay trans group that just got banned from Twitter, got banned from Facebook, who have been speaking out against, hey, you shouldn't be taking kids to drag shows. These are things that people on the left are not exposed to because their media will not cover it. They just will not cover it. If you see some of these images of children at these drag shows, these are not like toned down drag shows. I mean, I suppose in some cases they are, but in a lot of cases they're doing a strip show. So what if it were women? What if these were parents bringing their children to a strip club? Would you be okay with that? So now it's okay. Look, people see this. The average person sees this and they say the left is fucking crazy and they want to bring my child to see burlesque. What the fuck is going on here? This is why I say for those of us who are true leftists, who really care about universal health care, who really care about pushing a left agenda, who really care about free college, who really care about wages,
and that also includes not just that, but includes transgender rights,
of course,
and transgender equality.
More than it includes
exactly.
Us.
Right.
They are more likely to suffer. This is not an anti-trans thing. It's an anti-child abuse thing. You cannot force this on families. You cannot force this on children. What happens when people are above 18? That's their business. But when you start fucking around with how people's children are raised, you are hitting a very, very sensitive area. And I think that is reflected in a lot of this polling. I think a lot of people are scared of giving Democrats more social control, given what they have demonstrated they will do with it if you give it to them.
I think that's true to a certain extent. And, we'll talk more about that segment that we have in mind when we actually do the full segment. I don't want to tease out any more of it because then it'll just read as an incomplete segment there. But I think another factor, to me, the factor that has really existed, since COVID, especially since COVID, And maybe this is just from our perspective as like Bernie people, because COVID hit just as the Bernie campaign ended. But the Sanders campaign was the last real political movement in this country that actually stood for the actual accomplishing of political aims. The Joe Biden campaign did not stand for any of that. The Joe Biden campaign represented a return to normalcy post-Trump. Well, that's not a movement. That's not built upon. There's no sort of forward momentum to any of those ideas once you win. And so once you win, whatever movement there was, and you really can't even say there was a movement for Joe Biden, it completely runs out of gas. And I think the problem that you're seeing right now is that people are just resigned to the fact that this country is going one way the wrong way. I think COVID had a very depressing effect on people, right? A pandemic hits and you're locked down for a year or 2 years, depending on who you are and where you live. That really knocks some sense into you that, hey, everything you thought was so important was really not that important, because look, a little virus came along and took it all away.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And at that point, I think
it made people feel very vulnerable.
Very vulnerable, and just this existential sort of dread set in. And I think that manifested in a certain political attitude that this is just a dying country at this point. And what does an animal do when it knows it's about to die? When it's given up the fight, it's basically accepted that it's going to die. What do? They don't fight anymore. They find a place to be by themselves, to find some peace and some solace in their final moments before they just fall asleep and remain asleep forever. And that seems to be the phase that this country is in right now, because that's the only way I can explain that you have 70% of the country thinking we are on the wrong track, and yet no reform movements catch on. No reform agendas are actually... There's no momentum behind things that would actually reverse the trends that we're on. No momentum behind universal health care. No momentum behind UBI. Nobody in the street. Nobody protesting nuclear annihilation.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody. You know what I mean?
No nukes. None of that.
No. Everybody's just given up that this is the way it's going to be. And that's terrible for voter turnout when you are the in party. Because you represent a status quo that people are just kind of resigned to. Well, this sucks. They're not going to turn out. The MAGA chuds who still buy Trump's thing, yeah, they're inclined to turn out because he's saying, hey, we can fix this. We can do something. There's some energy there. And even the Trump movement is largely a death drive manifested to a certain extent. I think to a large extent, that is a movement of people who seek subconsciously to destroy and be destroyed.
Let's just light the shit on fire.
Right. But it's energy. Woo! It's energy. It's kinetic.
Big American barbecue.
It moves. It's a thing that moves. The Democrats don't move anymore. The Democrats are a cat that knows its days are numbered, and it goes and hides in the corner and just closes its eyes and waits for it all to be over. And that seems to be the phase that the Democratic Party is in now. And I think the country is in that phase as a whole, which leaves the only action on the GOP side. And so I think that's why you're seeing polling, like I just mentioned, right track, wrong track. How can 70% of the people think we're on the wrong track, yet there's no energy behind doing anything about it? Anything. The only Democrats who can break through are moderate Democrats, right? Take some money out of police departments and put it into productive social services. No. Socialized medicine. Give everybody health care, right? Wouldn't that be no. We don't want that. There's just no. You watch the Biden versus Trump debates. It was a contest about who was going to do less.
Right.
Right? That's really what it was. They were each accusing each other of wanting to do too much to disrupt the system. Where does that leave you?
Well, this is why, I mean, from the Wall Street angle, whenever Republicans win, if you remember the night that Trump won, there was this big dip in the stock market when he first won. The futures, it was overnight, so the futures were really low. And actually, Rachel Maddow, which really shows you who she is, calls that out as one of the horrific consequences of Donald Trump winning. Oh, the futures are down. Oh, teary-eyed about it. God knows what that was doing to her 401k. by the next morning, the traders had done the math. So what? This is going to be the best thing ever happened to us. Donald Trump's going to fucking deregulate everything in sight. Jesus, he doesn't even understand the system well enough to say no when we come to him and ask him to deregulate. He's not going to know how to regulate us. Woohoo! The first day after that election, market took off, and it was pretty strong through his whole administration. That's what's going to happen if the Republicans win the midterms. If the Republicans win the midterms, that's going to be the end of the bear market. In my opinion, the market's going to recover because people think, particularly because the Trump period, and look, that has a lot to do with the business cycle, but the Trump period was relatively prosperous. They're going to think the Republicans are going to get this all under control. And I think, culture war stuff aside, I think that's part of why the polls are swinging back in their favor too. I think a lot of people feel that he's going to be able, or not him, but the Republicans are going to be able to whip the country back into shape. Authoritarianism is always appealing in the midst of chaos. That having been said, Michael Moore, he's been laying out a lot of reasons why the Republicans are definitely going down to defeat that I don't necessarily agree with. One of his articles was Americans Hate Fascism. I don't know which America you've been living in.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're getting that from. A better analysis, and really the only necessary analysis, is this. Is there a hidden women's vote that's not showing up in the polls? Is this because of Roe? Is it a weird year where the undercounting of Republicans is actually more of a factor on the Democrat side, where you're having an undercounting of women who don't normally vote, who are infrequent voters, who may even normally be Republican voters, who are going to en masse, this is just not showing up in the polling, swing to the Democrats purely on Roe. I will say right now that is entirely possible. That is definitely possible, especially with some of the results we've seen in special elections post-Roe. That's definitely a possibility.
Oh, sure thing. Sure thing. And the Democrats will fare better because of the Roe overturning than they would have were it not. So it's going to help them a certain amount. But like I said, the bounce that they got in the generic ballot polling, at least according to some new polls, including polls done by liberal think tanks, that generic ballot advantage has started to go away. And in some cases, it has actually slipped to the point where now the GOP is back in the lead on the nationwide generic ballot. A generic ballot advantage for the Democrats doesn't necessarily help them in the House, because what that means, that's the overall nationwide popular vote.
Yeah.
So if the libs in Manhattan get really excited and they go out and vote Democrat, that doesn't do fuck all for Democrats in the House, because they all live in blue districts. It won't matter. Jack Carolyn gave us €2 or two. No, that's €2, right? Yeah, those aren't pounds. That's the euro sign. 2 quid, as they would say on your side of the pond. 2 quid, $2. Thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated.
2 bloody quid? What are we supposed to do with that? We're fucking Americans.
Right, exactly. I have to...
Some punts give me $15 Canadian. I've been walking around with it for 2 months now.
He says, better than a kick in the ass. That's true.
That's true.
Certainly.
That is true. Depending on who's doing the kicking.
Well, my mother-in-law just texted me. My mother-in-law just texted me the Mets are losing, and it looks like...
What did I tell you? What did I tell you?
According to my thing, now they're losing 4-0, top of the 5th. Oh, boy. That blows. I'm not a Met fan, but that blows.
That sounds like the fucking Mets. That sounds like the Mets. That's why I gave up when I was 8.
Saved himself a lot of surus, as they would say.
I was like the cat that knew there was no hope.
Right. Yeah, right, exactly. Hey, what do you guys think of this? I put together a little ticker. Like and subscribe, please. Please like this stream. Please subscribe to this channel. Help us grow this project. And if you can support the show at patreon.com/DoDissidents, I think that pretty much does it for the evening. What do you think?
Don't forget to like and subscribe and bring all your glasses and your shoes to the show so you have them. Okay, if anyone in the comment section knows what that's a reference to, I'll be even more impressed than the person who last week got the poltergeist reference.
Bring your glasses and your shoes to the show.
Should I bring all my glasses and my shoes so I have them?
I don't know that one.
That is, I'm going to give our listeners a second. I'm going to give them a second. No.
Axel says 50 in chat. Nice. Yeah, we do have a nice crowd. We're getting some nice crowds for these streams. We definitely appreciate that very much.
That is a classic Jerky Boys bit of Saul
Joan
Rosenberg calling the proctologist.
There you go. All right, everybody. Jared R says start a Discord server. You're not the first person to ask us to start a Discord server. We're going to have to do that, right? I mean, we should do that. If people are asking for it, we should do it.
I mean, I've only been on Discord back when everyone was doing the degenerate gambling Wall Street thing during COVID.
All right, well, we will try to set that up. Ryan Wood says, great show. Well, thank you. Thank you for sticking around. Ryan Wood was here the whole time. He was first in the chat, and now it looks like he's might be the last in the chat. But thank you guys very much for watching. This was a great show.
First
I'm going to go
last
watch
out like a salty due dissidence Marine.
Exactly right. First here in the morning, last one to go home in the evening.
I like your stuff. You're going to get a promotion, Ryan.
That's, Kyle's cousin on South Park. That's what you did sound like, Kyle's cousin on South Park.
Oh, yeah, that character does. Yeah,
when he visits.
They had, the Jerky Boys had a recurring character, Saul Rosenberg. And that was a classic Saul Rosenberg bit where he calls the proctologist like, I got hemorrhoids. They're tearing the ass out of me. Should I? And he makes an appointment. Should I bring my glasses and my shoes? So I have them? Like he's this guy with Alzheimer's and hemorrhoids.
That does sound like Kyle's cousin. I remember the episode where Kyle makes some deal where Cartman's not allowed to make fun of him, and then he sees him. He's like, "Oh Jesus Christ!" We put a South Park drop here. We put a South Park drop on the board, so we have that. Didn't use the soundboard much tonight. I felt like this was a pretty tame show. I felt like this was a pretty,
this was on the tame side. I mean,
this was on the tame side.
They can't be all nipple tassels and doing the Fauci and all that,
right? Because then it loses, loses the
effect. It becomes hacky,
right? Exactly,
right?
Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you very much. Like I said, please subscribe to this channel before you leave. DoDissidents.substack.com to join our email list, and patreon.com/DoDissidents to help keep the show going. We'll be back.
Yeah, and listen, if you can't super chat, we understand these are hard times, but look, forget about the super chat. Just join our Patreon for $5 a month, and then you actually get something out of it, right? Like this we do for free. You get this anyway.
Right. If you join for Patreon, you get bonus videos. Right. You get bonus videos and podcasts and call-in access to the show, so you can actually talk to us rather than just write to us. Axel Strife is Brandon. He just got his Do Dissidents t-shirt in the mail. Thank you for posting a picture of that in our Facebook group. Fits you well. You wear it well, my friend, so thank you so much. Alrighty, guys. I think that's all we got for the evening. Thanks very much. Be safe. Be well. We will see you all next time.
Please clap.